Does this work? I do. Good afternoon. Thank you for, it is the Dutch hour-ish, a bit more. We have 3 in a row by now. I'm going to do a session on basically an introduction to MSIX. Maybe you already know some of the content. I'm sure there will be some new. Okay, I'll stand here because it doesn't work. No clicker. This is going to be my lecture. Since last year, I started as a freelancer. So I've been working in this space for 25 years by now, doing a lot of work with digital workspaces, been at Citrix, been in other vendors, and a long time been a consultant. So I've been doing this for a while, but I figured this is time for me to go independent and basically spend my time the way I like it to be, which is more doing things which I like and enjoy doing. Being on vacation is one of them. So the first thing I did when I started as a freelancer is going to Bali for a month with a family. This is where I basically got inspired by the digital nomads that I saw there. And I think the digital nomads are inspired by the great work that we all do in EUC. Because basically, we enable their lifestyle. Because of the things we've done in EUC for the last 25 years, they are able to work in every location where they want. Work is no longer a location, it is an activity that you do. Words to live by, and maybe it's the other way around. We are inspiring digital nomads, and I think by now it's the other way around as well. The new generations are inspired by the digital nomads. So we know that Gen Z is looking up to them. They see them on Instagram and they're like, hey, this is the lifestyle that I demand by now. So whenever you get a Gen Z coming into your company, flexible work is what they desire. They don't want to come into the office every day. They typically want to go on a workation once in a while, so the digital nomads are something to look for, which is why I call the company Digital Nomad IT. One other thing I like doing is having a beer or two at the beach, specifically the IPAs. I'd like to thank you all for that, because it's, founded by, the English back in the days. You took the boat to India, did it in hold, so added more hops. I like this beer style. I like it a lot. Not just because of the beers, but also because it's a good reference to MSIX, because IPA also stands for iOS App Store package. And there's a lot of similarity actually between this IPA and what it meant for Apple and MSIX. Because of this IPA and the role it played in the Apple Store, that's basically the same role that MSIX can play for Microsoft. One of the big reasons iOS, iPad, and iPhone has been very successful is the user experience, referenced by Ryan and Elche just now. It is so simple. It was so simple all of a sudden to install an application. You go to a store, you click on the app that you want, you download it, and it's there. And it just works. You don't have to install any dependency. You don't have to figure out if it's just going to work on your device, because it's going to work either way. If there's an update, it's super simple. We just get updated because there's an update to that package. And that's what IPA brought to the Apple Store. That's what it brought to the iOS device. And if you want to remove it, you remove it, and there's no trace of that application. So it was very good. And that made it, that contributed to the success of iOS. And IPA in the Apple Store is similar to MSIX in that sense. MSIX should be able to bring that to Microsoft and the way you're going to deploy your application across the enterprise. So if you look at software distribution, the way we've done this in the past, and still do quite honestly, is we do an installation, right? It's an XE or an MSI, Microsoft installer. So you could see this as you are brewing your own beer. You got your ingredients, your binaries, and you got an instruction. This is how you can install it. If all goes well, you will have a nice fresh beer. For those who have brewed some beer before, the more beer start brewing with the same installation, the higher the chance there will be some contamination, and your beer is going to fail. So the more you brew on the same same installation, the worse the result is going to get. The example of an installation, if you want to remove it, see it as a sticker. You can add it on the wall, you can remove it, and if you're lucky, there will be no residue. But the more stickers you'll start adding, the more residue there will be. So that's the downside of the typical installations as we know them. An alternative is, okay, let's use a package or a canned application or a canned beer in this example, which we were introduced to with AppV back in the day, software. And that's basically just a package that you ship over to your desktop You'll start the application and it acts like a native application. It's still beer, still tastes good, it's fresh. However, whenever you dispose the can, there's no trace left. And it's all self-contained. It's all contained in that same package. And MSIX is basically, the evolution of all those ways of installing. So it's taking the best of all the installation methods into a new standard of Windows application distribution. So the big difference between those two types of installation of software distribution is that an installation is permanent. It's fixed onto the machine. It is mutable, so all the files that you see, they can be changed. And they can be changed by other processes, and therefore they are prone to, issues with that application. They are available for all the users of that device, and especially on a multi-session environment. You don't always want that application to be available for all your users, so you need to use something like Logic app masking to basically hide that application, and it works well. So there's still a lot of use case for a native installation or unattended. Packages are temporarily, right? You can add them, you can move them, you can very easily replace them with a newer version, just like we had with the IPA on Apple. Files, they are self-contained, they're part of their own container, and they are only for the selected users. So only for those users that you select, that MSIX application is available. And because it's virtualized in their own container, there is an improved interoperability between those applications. Or at least that's the promise, and typically where we in the past saw AppV. And we see MSIX more and more. And we see it's getting picked up, especially by Microsoft, in deploying their own core applications. So that's been Notepad and Edge for a while. Teams was an MSIX. The new Teams 2.0, so the VDI optimization for Teams, GA by now-ish, coming weeks, is also an MSIX. Jim just mentioned PowerShell 7, also an MSIX. But also the applications that you find in the Microsoft Store typically are already containerized applications. So there are already a lot of containerized applications out there which you're using. You might not already know that that's a containerized application in the form of MSIX. Now I can imagine by now you were like, Ingmar, where can I get my hands on my first MSIX package? There are a couple of ways that you can get a package, that you will get an MSIX package. And the first one is, and this is the ideal situation, it's provided by the vendor. There was an SDK introduced in 2018 when MSIX was introduced to the world, but we have seen low traction so far. And we'll get to that, the reason why that is. But so far, basically no vendor really provided their applications as an MSIX. And Microsoft is taking the lead here, so I think that's a good example. It's good that they do take the lead here with Teams and other applications. So we'll probably see more MSIX applications being provided by the vendor. The other one is the Microsoft Store. As just mentioned, a lot of applications are already out there. You can just get them from that store and deploy them in your organizations. And the good thing here is that there's basically a mix of consumer and enterprise applications. And even though these are consumer applications, like WhatsApp, Zoom, consumer-ish, people will use them in your organization. But it also contains Microsoft's own MSIX packaging tool, PowerShell, and some other applications. But the majority of the organizations will need to start repackaging. Basically taking an existing installation, repackage that into an MSIX application. So there's still a lot of repackaging needed. There's still a lot of work required in getting any application available as an MSIX. And we need tooling for that. Microsoft provides some of the tooling. There's Advanced Installer, there's Master Packager. There's a whole bunch of vendors that provide very mature solutions to build that package, to build an MSIX. And the last one, which I think technically is one of the coolest solutions, and is actually quite needed in some organizations, and that's reverse packaging. There are some customers who no longer have either the binaries for an installation or the instructions on how to do an installation. There are laptops being used by mechanics, laying around somewhere, and no one knows how that installation ever happened. Yet, you do need to modernize. You do need to modernize to Windows 11. you do need to modernize to another environment, or perhaps you just need to replace the hardware of that specific device. Reverse packaging basically looks at that specific machine, what binaries are there, what files are needed. I'll pick up all those assets and provide it as an MSIX container for you. So moving forward, you will have an application in your hand and you can start doing that migration, you can start modernizing. It is a last resort solution, but it's a very good last resort solution. So you'll find AppCure, you'll find a Cloud House, Remote Tree also via an OEM. So there are multiple options on doing a reverse packaging. Either way, most of the applications by now can be done with MSIX. Now when I talk about MSIX, there's sometimes some confusion on app attach, or is MSIX app attach or not, or is there any difference? And there is a difference, and there's a similarity. Jim is here, so I'll get corrected whenever I'll start saying things wrong. Hold your breath. The native MSIX is just a file, .msix. It is, self-contained. You can execute it, double-click on it. It will launch the application. That's it, right? Basically, it's a direct installation onto your machine, right? So you get a copy of those files on your machine. It's just like an installed application, except that it's, slightly better managed and it's contained. An app attach is not MSIX. Technically, this is not MSIX. It's a delivery mechanism to deliver an MSIX application in the shape of a disk volume. So it's technically not exclusive to MSIX. It is a disk volume, and you mount it to the machine. So basically, it's a form of disk streaming or volume streaming, and you get some disk layering with the added benefits of MSIX. When you go to AVD and you want to do application delivery, you want to deliver an MSIX, typically you will use app attach for that, because that's a mechanism that's built in. Still correct, Jim?
Yeah, I mean, I'd call it extraction rather than conversion.
Yeah, it is, extraction is probably a better word, yeah. Agree. They both have the same benefits, because for the end user, it's just an app. It's a native application, behaves just like any other application, as it should. The binaries are contained in the same container. Distribution is just so simple. No need for an installation, no complex methods. It's just sending it out and you're done. The benefits of the native format is you can edit it because it's still its own format, and it's portable, and therefore it can be used offline. So you don't need that mounted volume constantly available. So when you're on a laptop and you're traveling, probably the native MSIX format is the best way to go. The benefit of app attach is you don't need all this disk space on your device or in your session host. And it's typically slightly faster to launch because it's just a mount, and that's it. They also both have downsides. For both of them is, it doesn't work for all of the applications. There's no 100% success rate yet. And as just mentioned, you probably need to repackage because your vendor doesn't provide your app as an MSIX, or you just have a very old legacy application. They will never get there as an MSIX. You need some disk space for the native format, and it's not available in Azure Portal. You cannot distribute an MSIX in Azure Portal. Downside of app attach is because it's a mounted disk volume, that has to be very stable. You need to make sure that that's always available. The performance is reliable and is consistent. As just mentioned by Eljo and Ryan, consistency is key for user experience. It's not executable, not by hand, so some more manual work. App locker support, I find it more complex because of the GUIDs. It works, but I find it more complex, and there's a performance penalty. So far, all I could find was at least one IOP per app. If there are better guidelines, I'll take them. Both have pros and cons. You should use them in the way that you'd like, that fits your situation. Now we have the package in hand. We want to start delivering this to our end users. Otherwise, why have a package? Why have an MSIX? Now you need to know that there are two stages basically to get that application in the hands of your users. As an example, Microsoft Teams. I want to get this in the hands of myself on a multi-session host. The first phase is making sure that the application is available on the machine itself. This is what we call staging. So we're staging the application on the machine. But even though it's staged, the application is not yet available for me as an end user. It's not in my start menu. In order to do that, we need to register. These two phases are critical in understanding is what's happening with an MSIX. If it works, it's fine. You don't need to know this, but we all know in IT things will break. Things don't always work as they should. So know that the registering part is where it's being made available for you as a user. You can see it's only being made available to my user, not the others. But now at least I have Teams. I can start using the application as it's built, as it's intended. If I want to remove it, I can just unregister, I can unstage, and that application is gone. No traces whatsoever. It's not a sticker that we've removed with some residue left. That's not the case with MSIX. It's just, it's gone. We can now start updating or switching to an alternative or whatever we want to do. So how do you actually get this on your machine? How do you get this on your session host? One way of doing this, and this is what you'll find in the guys from Microsoft Teams as well, is use DISM, right? So you basically bake it into your running machine or into your golden image or whatever way you want to do it. You take the MSIX and say, okay, let's provision this, make it available to all users going to log in, and that's it. And then you need to do your image management. Personally, not a big fan because I'd rather distribute the application natively or through app attach so that you can start doing application lifecycle management. There will be new releases of Teams. I'm pretty sure there will be, and you need to manage them. So this works, but you need to start managing the OS itself. Guy already mentioned PowerShell quite a bit. If you want to start troubleshooting, if you want to understanding what's happening with MSIX, if it doesn't do what you want to do, there's a lot of PowerShell commandlets. I put them on here for reference. You'll see that it says add appx package and get appx package. Even though appx technically exists, we're talking about MSIX, everywhere you will find the name appx. I did see that you can now remove the X, get the same command, get app package. For reference, do note this happens. Especially when you start distributing Microsoft Teams for the first time in your environment, there are a lot of caveats, things you need to know. Might not work at the first time. It might not work in the second time. Use these commands for reference. There are some other articles at the end for troubleshooting Microsoft Teams distribution. Typically, these are the kind of commands that you need in understanding if the application is staged and registered for your user, because these two are probably going wrong. So if you start doing this, these are the three GPOs or registry settings that you need to set, most likely. The first one is you need to enable side loading. By default, your machine is set to only allow applications from the Windows Store. You're not allowed to install your own MSX applications, which you're probably going to do because Microsoft Teams is still provided as an MSIX. So you need to enable side loading or allow all trusted applications. If you don't want to set that, there are some hotfixes that you can apply so you don't have to enable this. Still would recommend that you do because there will be more MSX applications coming your way. You probably want to have this enabled. There's still a security mechanism around this. As you can see, it reads allow all trusted applications. It's still a matter of trust, and I'll explain later how we'll do that. Allow development without dev license. Basically, it enables you to add some more packages from the store, even development, but especially the last one is important. Block non-admin user install. Unless you want to do all the installations with an elevated account, you typically want your end user to do this as well, especially the updates. The Teams plugin probably will be installed by non-admin, so you want to have this disabled. Again, there are some hotfixes that can fix this to make it better. I would recommend apply the hotfixes either way and set the policy to disabled. Lee just mentioned there are some hotfixes. Get the latest version of FSLogix. Yes, hotfix 3 and 4 both fix some issues with Teams. I think it's broader than just Teams because they basically register the application which is on the device. I'm not sure if it's limited to Teams, but I think they just start registering applications that are available.
It's not just Teams, it's all of it. Yeah.
Exactly, so it's broader than just Teams. Even though in their release notes they do write Teams, they basically start registering applications that are available. Again, you can bake it into the image if that's how you want to do it. I think you should use distribution mechanisms so you have some management. You can do some application management. And most of the organizations are using Intune. So use Intune if that's available. The pro is that you also have, you can deploy native MSIX applications. You have self-service if you desire. It is just commonly used. So this is, the easiest way of distributing applications to your modern workspace. There are some downsides, like not having app attach. I have never seen Intune used in AVD. Maybe it is, but typically I don't see it. So therefore, not the best solution. To me, it's still click and pray. If it works, it works.
So Intune is actually used for, it's a minority use case, but it's still a significant use case for AVD.
I'm sure there is, and I think over time it will evolve in that we'll see more instances where Intune is used in AVD. Just at the moment, not a lot. Might change, but it works. It works very, very good. I think the logging is still horrible. Sorry. Try troubleshooting doesn't exist, and if it exists, still haven't found it. Cleanup is moi, and some others. Pros and cons. Either way, you probably have Intune. If you have modern workspaces, probably you want to use Intune. Oh, if you are on AVD, then you have Azure Portal. It's there, it's available, it works. It's getting a lot better since Jim is on there. You'll have app attach in there, so that's good. Unfortunately, you don't have native MSIX. I think there's a good use case for using native MSIX on a multi-session host or even a single session host. Pro is you have Active Directory and Entra ID with the latest release. You actually have logging. Yes, there's proper logging in with app attach. Still, troubleshooting is horrible. It's better than Intune, but it's not very good. Maybe it's getting better, Jim.
So if you look into, if you activate log analytics for it, then the troubleshooting is really good.
Good one. Log analytics. Okay. Instead of just using, even if you start using log analytics, it's better. Some downsides, it's, manual mounting is, I'd say not possible. It's just very difficult. You can. Disk extraction is not in the UI, or change conversion. So you need to run a PowerShell commandlet. I think this is missed opportunity. I hope you'll bake it into the UI someday.
And say that again?
Disk extraction, so MSIX into an app attach in the UI. Good, thank you. So looking into, this is what Microsoft provides you. If you're on Citrix also have app delivery, especially in the later builds. You'll find that they do some more delivery of applications, including MSIX. Only app attach. Oh no, sorry, native and app attach. Omnissa has app volumes. I wanted to say VMware, it's Omnissa. So you can also deploy MSIX. Shameless plug here, I also work for Aventix. If you want to do it all, Aventix can do it all. Cloud, hybrid, on-premise, whatever application you want to distribute. Oh, you also get real-time delivery, proper troubleshooting. Okay, end of shameless plug. What applications are actually going to work? There are some horror stories on MSIX, typically shared by those who are not in favor of MSIX or have an alternative product to sell. Tim Mangan each year brings out a scorecard in which he looks at 96 various applications, simple to complex, various complexities, and looks at the success rate. He has basically the baseline of using AV. It has a 92% success rate. At the first builds, 2018, 2019, 20% success rate, not a lot. Even if you start adding some magic with a PSF, 40%-ish. This is probably what you will hear talking to someone who heard about MSIX a couple of years ago, and this is sticking. Like, MSIX is not going to work, it doesn't work, it's only 20%, and that's it. But, time has passed by, in 2024 by now. The latest check from Tim was last year, so January. By now, we're at 82%. Right? Okay, you do need some magic, quote unquote, the packaging support framework. Otherwise, you'll get a third. But you will have 82% success rate. And that 80% might not be your applications. Depending on your landscape, you might even hit 100%. Can imagine, now you're wondering, Ingmar, what do we need to get to 100%? And I've done the math, it's 18%. Looking into, slightly deeper, there are various reasons, complex applications, if you have, a lot of shared COM objects or certain shell extensions, yada, 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 then MSIX still can't handle that. There is not a package support framework that can fix that for you. So certain complex applications don't work. I'm going to draw the line here because the bottom is already fixed, right? So a lot of them are already fixed in a PSF. PSF is the package support framework. Basically, it's a mechanism to start looking into the blockers when you use a virtualized environment, and it will start fixing that manually or automatically, depending on the tool that you're using. The top row, top items, and I'm sure there will be more, are known quote-unquote issues, challenges with MSIX. I know that Tim Mengen is working on a few of them this year. So this score will go up. And depending on your landscape, you know, you'll have them all, you have them a bit. If you are lucky and you're using Remote Tree or a certain, you know, similar tool, you'll know this ahead of time because you could do an assessment. You can check if your application is going to run as MSIX, and you can make your decisions ahead of time. So the name of an MSX package, guy just said, it's a modern app, PowerShell. No, it's not. It's still Win32 application, except it was delivered as an MSIX. And then you'll see C, program data, Windows apps, and this long name. This long name is the package full name. So it's the name of the package, you know, provided by whoever built this. There's a version, very long, as you can imagine, it will change frequently. There's an architecture. So yes, you can have the same application for x86, x64, and AMD 64, which I like because I have a Mac.
ARM, don't forget ARM.
That's ARM. AMD 64 is ARM. I have an ARM, runs AMD 64, most applications. Service Pro probably will get more ARM processors as well. And then it ends with the quote-unquote hash of the publisher. Technically not a hash. It is fairly unique, so let's stick to this.
It is a hash of the CN of the certificate publisher name.
And then taking a bit of it. Read an interesting article from Tim Mangan. It's not unique, but let's say it's a hash.
Yeah, fine.
Fine. It is a hash or it isn't, doesn't matter. It's a hash-ish. It's fairly unique. Let's say it is. Derived from the package full name is the package family name. You cannot, you know, this is being generated by the machine itself. You cannot change it, except that you know that the package names, you know, is provided by you. The hash is the hash. This is important because typically you want to apply policies and settings and, you know, whether it's allowed or not based on the family name, because this is more static. If a version updates, if a version changes, still the same policy is applied. If you have multiple architectures, same policies apply to all these applications. Now if we look at an MSX package itself, this is what you will get from Microsoft. There's binaries, or package payload, and there's metadata, or footprint files. So inside of one application, one package, this is what you will get. 90% of the cases, you'll probably also have the PSF, so the package support framework. So these are the 3 layers that you will find into an MSX package. If we will look inside a file, MSX you can just rename to zip, and then we'll extract. So therefore, native MSX to AppAttach is extracting this file into a disk volume. This is what you will get. Bunch of folders, bunch of files. So the application files or the package payload, you see a virtual file system. You see a directory, you see a registry file. The files we've seen for the last 20 years basically, because they're quite similar to what we have with FV. Virtual file system, virtual registry. You can open it, you can change it, all good. Orange is the package, Orange support framework. So Orange will get injected automatically, but the last bit is interesting. Everything is interesting. I find this one interesting. The metadata. The Apex manifest file basically contains the definition of your package. This is where you find your application properties, your entry points in your start menu, in your context menu, file type associations, etc. And the last one is very important. There's an app signature, because every package needs to be signed. It needs to be signed with a code signing certificate. And if you want to distribute this to managed machines, then you can use your own issued certificate. So you can issue it from your own domain, make sure that the CA is trusted by your endpoints, and this is the way you can distribute it. Probably you want to use a publicly trusted certificate if you want to start distributing to unmanaged devices. Either way, it's good. What's important, or the recommendation I want to give, even though the timestamp server is optional, use it every time you do, because basically what it ensures is it gives the timestamp as part of the package. If the machine opens it up and sees it's trusted, yet the certificate is expired, it will take it as granted, saying, okay, it was validated back then. We can see it's validated by a trusted timestamp server. Therefore, you are allowed to open this application. I've been into accounts where they did sign with a certificate that had a validity of a year, did not use a timestamp server, and all hell broke loose because all these applications stopped working. Resigning is not that difficult. Redistributing to 1,000 devices or more is quite painful. So, use the timestamp server. It's free. It's not complex. So use it. It ensures that only trusted applications are installed. Right? So the machine will check that certificate. Own PKI or public, doesn't matter. It also verifies the integrity of the file. So it's very important that it is signed. It is a layer of security. It's also the reason you cannot just change the app manifest. If you want to change the content of the start menu, you want to have your own file type associations, it means you need to start re-signing, and that hash is going to change. So therefore, that hash is important. Remember that if you get a new file with a different hash, this is why that's the case. And I'm at the hour, or half hour, so I want to thank you for the time here, listening to another Dish guy, and having me on stage.
Well done, Ingmar.